I'm going to talk about Padrino. And Padrino is basically a Ruby framework, and I'm a Ruby developer. And basically, all the time in my career, which is not that long, I used to work with Rails. And this is basically about me slide, the typical one. So I'm a Ruby developer in brand new, where I have to say I work with an amazing team. We do the full stack Rails application, so I'm running the process of everything. And basically, what we do is we connect the brands and influencers on Instagram or Pinterest. We run automated campaigns and also like collect information and report them to the people, to the advertisers. What I also do is I recently co-founded my very first company. It's also a Rails application. It's basically a traveling platform for vegans and vegetarians, and also like a lifestyle blog, since people are interested about things around these topics as well. I'm also very interested in Internet of Things, and that's why I co-organized one of the events in Berlin here. It was in July. It's called Make Things. That's a part of bigger movement. It's in many countries in the world. It started in Poland and in many cities as well. There will be sometime soon next event in Berlin, and I totally encourage you all to attend, because I believe you're also all interested about these things. I personally like tinkering with Arduinos and cables, and except having this gut-like feeling power of code line and creating programs, I also like actually connecting cables and making light bulbs work. And this is all about this, make things. And what I also do, I started with Rails Girls, my developer career in general, so from time to time when I have time, I try to pay back my debt and also be a coach there at the events. And through all this, there's one thing that's in common, it's Ruby and Rails, all the time, all over all these things. And I wanted to tell you about Padrino, which is a simpler Ruby framework. And let me tell you about this through a little story of a Ruby developer looking for frameworks, trying to build a personal website. Basically, there's episode 1, which is Rails. Since I know Rails very well, I would say, I started with this, obviously. This is how you build the very base application in Rails. You just put in a terminal after obviously having installed Ruby and Rails. You just put Rails new and the name of your application, and there is tadam, this big bunch of files being created for you, and everything is structured. You have all these app folder, bin files, config, lib, logs, public, everything what you might need, and then inside your app folder that you actually any person that is starting with web development is actually using, which is like assets, controllers, and then on top of controllers there are concerns, which people who start and or build just simple things don't really use, helpers and mailers, another thing that for most cases you don't really use and need. So I started to think, do I really want to use Rails all the time for all my projects? And the answer is like, probably not. So Google is my best friend, as always. Simple search, Ruby frameworks. Obviously I knew a couple of names just from the top of my head, from meetups, from other people, what we can do with Ruby, what are the frameworks. But then I needed some data, numbers. So obviously Ruby on Rails is on top of everything. The community is super strong. It's a very popular framework, period. Everyone basically knows Rails who is in the world of Ruby. Then there is, in Ruby, like according to Ruby Toolbox, so the gems for Ruby, and then the web frameworks. The next one is Rack, which is not really a web development framework, so I just decided to leave it out. And then there is another choice. There's Sinatra, the second place after Ruby on Rails. Smaller, but I heard so many good things about the framework. Basically, interesting fact about Sinatra is that it's so super small that the entire code base is below 2,000 lines of code, which is pretty cool, I think. So I gave Sinatra a shot. And that leads us to another episode of the story, which is Sinatra. And everyone says Sinatra is so easy, and it's true. These are steps to create very first Hello World application in Sinatra. Install gem, create your file. In your file, basically write 4 lines of code, which is requires Sinatra. Put your block of code, is just a simple Ruby block of code. Put your HTTP verb, a root, a code to execute, and the block. Here we go. Run the file like every Ruby file. Go to your localhost, and this is exactly how it works. That's the base of Sinatra. That might be super good for building anything super lightweighted, and I decided to work with this a bit. And I tried to look for some tutorials or like people who already built real projects with Sinatra on how actually it works, what I can do with this, how I can use it, what's the best use of this. And I found this as a like super basic example of just serving static pages. And this is still one file where you can see your free blocks of code for executing your free static pages. You have your root, you have everything, and at the end of the file, you also have the body of your pages. It still makes sense. It's amazing for someone who wants to understand what's actually happening, because with Rails it's not that obvious for a person who is not that into web development, I would say. You have to know more concepts for this to understand what's going on with all the files and the construction and the structure of files. And yeah, Sinatra, I found it pleasant to play with. But then I decided that actually I don't want to build an API simple frame, like I don't want to build an application to serve with API. I'd like to go a bit more crazy on my personal website, for example. And then for the personal website, we have like some typical things that people want to build when they play with web development. First, we want to have our static pages, like about me, what I do, and that I like llamas, for example. Then usually people who start with all these things want to build a blog to write about experience, which is a great idea. Then I decided that I want to be unique in this word, so let's put a gallery of funny llamas as well, because cats are out of fashion, I heard some time ago. And maybe, let's say, like a contact form for people who could actually write me an email like, Hi Anita, maybe you would work with us. So I started to read more about Sinatra. And yes, there are people saying that basically everything is possible with Sinatra. Yes, I agree. But then I found an amazing article. And basically there was an excellent quote from Konstantin Hase, our own Berlin-based co-founder of Travis SC. And basically that's a quote. Writing a more complex Sinatra application, or rather an application using, amongst other things, Sinatra, which I think is amazing, requires the developer to spend way more time thinking about architecture and tooling. This is both advantage and disadvantage. And people are lazy usually, right? So I decided I want to be lazy too, and I don't want to just hide the environment of Sinatra to build something which is on one hand super simple, but on the other hand, I want to build something more. So I decided to give a shot to the third thing that was on the list, which is Padrino. A framework that I found out is based on Sinatra. So it's basically it was built as a superset of Sinatra features, and it developed this way to a single framework, to a separate framework. And what really I was seriously sold after reading this one sentence from the Padrino website, basically putting fun, easy, and code in one sentence made the trick for me. And I really find that I found this, yeah, that sentence makes sense. It might be fun, it might be easy, I like to code. It's the Sinatra spirit, which I really enjoyed after tinkering with Rails, and seems like a great tool, yes. And one of the reasons why I decided also like not to hack with Sinatra too much also was that, as I showed you the example, there is just one file in, basically you start with one file in Sinatra, and then you have to build your structure of files by yourself. And there are so many gems, so many things, so many tutorials to build things on top of this. But basically, and that's a beauty, because you can go any direction you want, that's also a lot of manual work. And I didn't want to do that. I also didn't want to have this full structure that Rails gives me, because I don't need that all. That's why Padrino sounds really like a solution. And okay, so the Padrino. I would call it a happy ending for this particular project and for many projects as well, because Padrino seemed like a tool that is exactly in between Sinatra and Rails. Regarding the size and structure, it took all the beauty of Rails and generators and scaffolding into easy access and really clean code and approach of Sinatra. And this is, for example, how you can create your very first Padrino application. Obviously, you have to install your gem first. Then there is also a generator for projects in Padrino, which is just goes Padrino G project, name of your project. Then you have tons of options to pick on top of your application. Without this -d active record, it would create a simple application with no database connection, and using by default, I think, HAML and other front-end files and RSpec for testing. Those are the only defaults by Padrino. And all of these options are totally up to you. So by generating this very first structure of your application, you can pick if you want to just have a tiny app that just runs by itself, and that will be pretty much like Sinatra, but with a bit more structured files and folders to build for you. Or you want to go for a full stack application, and you can pick the tools for testing, whatever you want. I think it has like 8 different things possible to connect. Then to pick your own database and the connection there, and many other things. This is how you install. This is how you create your very first application. Rerun bundle install, because bundle is already there, and you start your Padrino application. What you can see down there on the left side is pretty much what files are created for you with this command. It creates your application folder with controllers, helpers, and views, public, temporary files, and config. And you don't need much more at the very start. Although it doesn't create any views for you, maybe that's a good thing after Rails. So when you run it, you just see that Sinatra doesn't know this DT thing, but it tells you straight away what to do next. In app.rb, put your first class to actually run something in your application. And yes, what to do next with this thing? Padrino, I found out, has amazing admin tool, which is built in already there. It was very inspired by, I believe, Django framework admin style. And this is how it looks. And this is how you can create this. After actually using some database, active record in my case, you just can create your admin there. You can just run bundle install, create a database connection, migrate database, seed your database. You put your first email, which is your username and password, and then you go there. You go to like your localhost /admin, and you can already go there. Everything is built. What to do with this next? This is just like super basic. Your application can't do anything except logging your admin, and you can add new users, for example, as you can see here. So let's add the first thing, for example, to operate with your blog. And I found it very similar, actually it's the same like in Rails, where you can basically just generate model, and it really follows the MVC structure of like model view controller. And you can basically generate your model. You can put the name of your model and what should be there in your model. You should migrate your database after this. because you're adding a new table. You add your controller to actually act with this model, and then following this pattern you add your views, and after that you can everything in a neatly way put inside your admin. So altogether you already can see the index and you have all the basic things like to edit, create, delete and show this single blog post and index in these few steps. And you can operate with all this using admin from the back of your page. That's pretty easy. I basically going to this stage, following tutorial is just like a few minutes of your life basically, and I found it really nice, and that was an easy and very good experience. And I think for many people also could be if you start with frameworks or if you want to try something else, something new. And after you create all this, you remember like the big chunk of files that Rails creates for you, then it's obviously a lot. Then that's the list of files after actually running the migrations for like generating the admin and generating the first model view controller thing for all blog posts. It really looks like Rails, the structure, but it doesn't really build anything on top that you might not need to build something super simple at the beginning. So you have your admin files and all the controllers and views for admin in one folder, and you don't even have to think about this because with admin everything is generated automatically. With controller, you have just app controllers, you have helpers, that's an automated thing, not really used at the moment. They have model and your views for your posts. On top of that, you have your database migrations, and that's basically this. Few more files for config, and that's the entire Padrino application, which is way less than Rails to handle at once. And I would say that this looks pretty neat, the configuration of files, and how is it structured, how it works, how easy it is actually to get something running. I was amazed because I was said that Rails is so amazing because you can scaffold everything and generate everything, and you put 2 command lines and then it works magically. And it's even better with Padrino apparently. So, but it's not more. It's like there's way more with this, behind Padrino. And about this, there is a full list on Padrino website of what it consists of and the main features. And I found it, I picked few main features that I found really useful for myself, and I believe might be very useful for other people who just want to start tinkering with this and building web apps. Just like maybe for start of web development thing, you don't have to build amazing backend engineering things. You want to play with this and see your results when you play with new framework usually. So there are a couple of things that are absolutely nice. For example, this is the example of a mailer that you can use directly in your controller. I found it very different from Rails, for example, because in Rails you have to go through more files to actually have the result of sending an email from, like, for example, params from your website, just to send it by email. In Padrino, actually, this is still the Ruby block of code. You can put it directly in your controller. It can take the body from the params, for example, or it can get it from the form, and you can send it directly from there. That doesn't require anything else to send an email, which I found really easy and really simple. And yes, another good thing that is built on top of Sinatra is that you can actually send this email, use it, and you can use it with helpers. There are a bunch of helpers. I don't know about numbers, but to me it looks like exactly like in Rails. You basically have helpers for everything. You have helpers for assets, for style sheet, link tag, for meta tags. You have the form helpers, which are also very helpful. So all the from form for to checkbox and all the little things to format your data to, for example, distance in time in words or to highlight some text. And it's all there. It's ready to use. It really adds a lot of functionality on top of Sinatra and makes it really easy to use just when you want to build your website like that. Okay, and what's more? This thing is taken directly from Padrino documentation, from the tutorial. This is something that really blew my mind in a way, because that's the first time I actually realized that it's so easy to actually mount few applications into one. It's not really that easy, or it's not really possible in Rails, and I don't know many other concepts. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's something super popular in web development world and I'm just not aware of this, but I found it really cool. All the Padrino applications are automatically mountable into other Padrino applications. What it means for me as a user? Well, it's pretty great because, for example, let's say I built this personal application, I have this personal website, and I have my gallery of llamas, I have my blog, I have my page about me. People can just send me an email directly from the website. That's all very cool. But maybe at some stage, I want to, let's say, have a shop with something there because, I don't know, let's paint llamas, for example, for a change. So I will do the paintings and I want to sell them. Then I can create my external Padrino application that's going to work as a shop there, and that can be automatically connected all together. That is very good for at least one thing, in my opinion. You can scale Padrino application very well, and you can add components and seriously play with this like with Lego bricks. It gives you the minimum structure, and you have so many components you can add and just like click in with no hassle. And it comes from the super basic level until the advanced support of the mountable apps, because then you can work on this on the actual links level. So you can actually set that the blog goes there, admin goes there, and you can host the application separately completely, which I think is also very good. Okay, so that will be the end of my story. The epilogue is, Padrino is definitely cool. I had a lot of fun playing with this. I found it extremely refreshing to play with something else than Rails. I can totally recommend to play with more frameworks. I found that Sinatra is really interesting as a concept of how you get your code executed and how you structure a file and how you get there. But Sinatra, as I mentioned, it's very good if you want to really think about your structure and build everything by yourself. It's amazing for this. But for lazy people and for people who maybe are just so busy, not lazy, and they want to just build things with ease, not to think about building something as a pain in the ass, but just like a fun thing to do in your free time, that might be certainly the thing to go for. I really enjoyed the structure of Padrino. I think I can really recommend this, for example, for learning, even though the community of Padrino and Sinatra itself isn't as big as for Rails, which makes it sometimes harder to find a solution for the problems. Although I think it's way less information to process. So in a way it's going to be less answers, but it's going to be also less questions at the very beginning. And that's the main plus of Padrino for me. Everything there is very clear and neat. The routing is a perfect example. You can add your generators and templates. There are a bunch of templates to use. For example, you don't even have to generate your blog. You can run a template for creating a blog from scratch. So still it takes just a couple of commands in the terminal, and here it goes. Then you can mount it inside, and basically there's like never-ending story what you can do with this, and it all goes this basic level. The generators are like in Rails for me, and this is the part I found really amazing. And the admin. Admin is something that really people don't really think about it in the first place while building stuff. And it's really nice to have something that you don't even, you put just 2 commands and it's there. It's very useful, you don't have to use it all the time, but it's always nice to have. And this admin looks really good and it's very functional. Bunch of helpers, this is what I said. It really makes your life easier when you're just like into web development. The simple mailer behind all this, and the fact that you can actually mount it all together and work with your, start with simple Padrino application and then add and add and add more stuff. And then you can create something very big out of this, and basically the sky is your limit, I would say, on it. Thank you. I think I forgot about one slide. Yes, this is me. You can basically find me anywhere on the internet with my real name, which is Anita Jaszewska, or Let's Leave It Empty. And I either have my face somewhere on the internet or this pink dot. And Let's Leave It Empty anywhere else if it's not Anita Jaszewska. And the story behind this is that it was my first GitHub handle because I simply didn't know what to do and I thought I can change it later, but I decided not to. So yeah, I think it's time for questions, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
May I copy
No, sorry. Time for questions.
Ah, okay.
You can give her a card, it's okay. May I copy the app structure folder to Rails and it works?
If you want.
Copy the app folder to Rails and does it work? Because it seems it's the same structure.
Yeah, it should work. Yeah. Except views. Except views, because views it's like slightly different. Like in Rails, you for example have always like this HTML.erb or ham or whatever you use. And then, for example, it's slightly different because in Padrino you use, for example, index.ham or md. But it's like slight change. And no, controllers also I think wouldn't work because that's a different approach for... No, I think it wouldn't work actually. I'm sorry. Because then when you think it's a different structure of controllers. So in Rails you need this routing file, and it controls like your controllers and like distributes the what actually happens in the app. Whether in there it's like so the structure would work probably, but what's inside your file is completely not. Any more questions? I have a sip of water in the meantime.
No questions.
As long as I have voice to talk.
You're using active record, so it's obviously a Rails gem. Does it depend on any other aspects of Rails apart from active record? I've used Sinatra and I've used active record for that purpose, and it's very cool. I just wondering if you use it any other.
You mean like for databases or in general for Rails?
What else does it borrow?
Oh, it takes so many things basically. Whatever is in Rails, you can. There's a high chance you can use it there, and bunch of gems designed only for Padrino and Sinatra, and all the Ruby gems itself. So yeah, it's really like these bricks. You can seriously add a lot on top. Okay, I think that's it for
This is the last time I'm trying to give you this.
I'm sorry.